The Legend of Zelda is one of the most respected franchises in gaming history, but even its best games have mechanics that players absolutely hate. Some are annoying because they interrupt you, some waste your time, some punish you for things outside your control, and some became so infamous that Nintendo had to redesign them years later. So today, we're going through the most hated Zelda game mechanics ever, starting with one of the smallest sounds that somehow became one of the most irritating features in the entire series: low health beepin' origin and survival. The beep was born on the NES in 1986 as a practical audio cue for low-resolution screens, yet it has survived unchanged across nearly 40 years of hardware evolution. How it works: technically, the game continuously checks Link's heart value. When it drops to 1 heart or below, a binary flag triggers a looping sound routine, essentially a non-stop alarm. Why? It backfires. Psychologically, rather than encouraging careful play, the stress of the noise causes players to rush recklessly, often dying faster than they would have otherwise, completely inverting its intended purpose. Community response: no low health beep. ROM patches are among the most downloaded mods for emulated Zelda titles, showing widespread frustration. Nintendo's stance despite decades of complaints: no official game has ever added a toggle to disable it, seemingly treating the beep as an iconic brand element. Guardian Skywatcher patrols. Guardian Skywatchers are either the best or worst thing in Breath of the Wild, depending on how many hearts you have. These flying death machines patrol handcrafted routes around every important spot on the map: Sheikah Towers, road junctions, story ruins, which means their placement isn't random. The developers wanted you to suffer in these exact locations. That laser charge-up sound has been compared to a horror game jump scare cue, and they're not wrong. You're halfway up a tower, managing stamina on a narrow ledge, and then you hear it. That high-pitched lock-on tone cuts through everything. Red targeting beam. 2 seconds before a laser that can drain 6 hearts turns you into a ragdoll, falling off a cliff. Early game, these things are oppressive. A single, fully charged beam can delete most of your health bar when you're running around with 4 hearts and a Bokoblin club. But once you master shield parries, or grab ancient arrows, Skywatchers transform from nightmare fuel into satisfying target practice. Data miners confirm the exact line of sight cone and firing timing. The danger zone is precise and knowable. You just have to get bodied by it a few times first. The community splits cleanly on this. New players call them unfair. Experienced players call them the best emergent difficulty in the game. At least they stay in the sky, unlike the mechanic we're about to cover, which makes you want to throw your controller every time the weather changes. Rain climbing. Breath of the Wild promised you could climb anything. Turns out that promise came with a massive asterisk, unless it's raining. Rain doesn't just make surfaces slippery. It fundamentally breaks the climbing system by triggering periodic slip events that cancel your vertical progress and drain your stamina simultaneously. Every few seconds, Link loses his grip, slides down a fixed distance, and you can't do anything about it. No input matters. You just watch him fall. Certain slopes become literally unclimbable on a single stamina wheel, no matter how good you are. You can time your jumps perfectly, eat stamina food, and still make 0 net progress because the slip animation eats more height than you can gain between slides. And because weather is semi-randomized, rain can start mid-climb, retroactively invalidating a route you committed to minutes earlier. The cruelty is that it attacks the game's most celebrated feature. You can see the shrine. It's right there. You know you have the skill and stamina, but the weather overrules your effort. So you stand at the base of a cliff, watching rainfall, waiting for the in-game timer to crawl forward. The community's coping strategies are legendary. Fast traveling to cycle weather, eating stamina meals as a tax on bad luck, or leaving the game idle, hoping the storm passes. Tears of the Kingdom kept rain sliding, but added Zonai devices as workarounds. Nintendo's preference is to offer escape hatches rather than fix the core mechanic. At least you're not being hunted by a laser-eyed octopus robot while waiting for clear skies. But if you think standing in the rain is annoying, wait until you meet the spirit that won't stop interrupting you to tell you your batteries are low. FI interruptions. FI is either the most helpful companion in Zelda history, or the most annoying digital nag ever programmed into a video game. And I can prove it. Fi is the sword spirit in Skyward Sword, your ever-present guide through the entire adventure. Sounds fine, right? Except she interrupts gameplay constantly to tell you things you already know. The game pauses, the screen fades, and Fi materializes to inform you there's a 95% chance that the giant glowing switch directly in front of you might be important. Thanks, Fi. But here's where it gets truly absurd. Fi will interrupt your mythological quest to save the world to tell you that your Wii remote batteries are running low. You're in the middle of a dungeon, sword raised, about to strike a boss, and the game pauses to discuss AA batteries. The immersion isn't just broken, it's shattered into pieces and then analyzed with pseudo-scientific percentage. The worst part is that most of her interruptions are mandatory. No button to skip, no way to opt out. She just appears, talk, and you wait every single time. The notoriety got so bad that when Nintendo released Skyward Sword HD, in 2021, they explicitly marketed less intrusive Fi as a selling point. 10 years after the original release, they had to patch the game to make the companion shut up more often. The entire Zelda community celebrated. That's how universally despised this was. Fi became shorthand for overbearing tutorial design across the entire franchise. Even devoted Skyward Sword fans freely admit she talks too much. It's one of the only things everyone agrees on. The Water Temple Iron Boots swap. The Water Temple in Ocarina of Time isn't actually hard, it's slow, and the culprit is hiding in plain sight, the equipment menu. In the original N64 version, the iron boots are classified as gear, not an item. Every time you need to toggle them, you pause the game, navigate the cursor to the correct slot, select or deselect, and close back out, several seconds, every single time. The Water Temple's entire design revolves around alternating between sinking to the floor and swimming freely. You swap those boots dozens of times in a single run, not 5. Not 10, dozens. Open, navigate, select, close, over and over. Then in 2011, Ocarina of Time 3D reclassified the iron boots as a touchscreen quick access item. One tap, instant toggle. 0 changes to the dungeon layout, 0 changes to the puzzle structure. Same temple, different menu. And suddenly the reputation shifted. Players who revisited it on 3DS consistently reported it felt far less tedious, even though they were solving the exact same puzzles in the exact same rooms. The only variable that changed was how many seconds it took to equip a pair of boots. That's the smoking gun. An interface layer, not the dungeon itself, was responsible for one of gaming's most notorious reputations. The Water Temple is a UX murder mystery, and the killer was the pause menu the entire time. But if you think menu friction is bad, wait until you meet a boss that makes you fight it 3 separate times for no reason other than the seal is annoying. The Imprisoned boss fights. The Imprisoned is either a tragically wasted concept or proof that good intentions can absolutely strangle execution. You fight this thing 3 times, 3 mandatory times, and each encounter follows the exact same loop. Hack the toes, wait for the collapse, sprint up, and smack the head sigil. Repeat. The narrative hook is great on paper. The Demon King literally breaking free in stages while you're the only thing standing between it and total catastrophe. But the execution turns what should be an escalating threat into a recurring chore that tests your patience more than your skill. Here's the thing. Each fight is a race. The Imprisoned slowly climbs a spiral ramp toward the temple at the summit, and if it reaches the top, you fail. So you're dealing with time pressure, awkward large-scale combat, and a stamina system that punishes every misstep by forcing you into fatal slow walking at the worst moment. A late mistake near the end of a 5-minute fight means starting completely over. You did everything right, fumbled once, and now you're back at 0. That's a disproportionate punishment, and it's exactly why many players cite the Imprisoned as the primary reason they avoid replaying Skyward Sword entirely. Later fights add abilities like faster movement and aerial launches, which should make them feel different. Turns out, no. You're still hacking toes, still waiting for the collapse, still sprinting up to hit the same glowing weak point. Skyward Sword HD improved the frame rate and added button controls, but the core structure was preserved unchanged. By the third fight, you're not battling a Demon King. You're battling the urge to turn the game off. At least the Imprisoned is confined to 3 encounters, unlike what's coming next, where the game decides your late game reward is doing homework. Triforce Shard Quest. Wind Waker is gorgeous, emotional, and one of the most beloved entries in the series. And then it does this. Late in the game, right when you're racing toward the climactic showdown, the story slams the brakes and hands you a checklist. 8 Triforce of Courage shards scattered across the Great Sea. 8 separate charts that need to be found, each one taken to Tingle Island so Tingle can decode it for you for a fee, a substantial rupee fee, and you need all 8 translated. If you weren't hoarding currency throughout the entire game, you now get to spend several hours grinding rupees before you're allowed to continue the story. Breaking pots, replaying minigames, all so you can pay a man in a green bodysuit to read your map. Once you've paid Tingle, you sail to the marked coordinate, drop the salvage crane, and play a collision detection minigame where you lower a hook onto an invisible chest below the surface. Then you do it again, 8 times total. Same mechanical loop, 8 consecutive repetitions across a large and largely empty ocean. The Great Sea was a strength earlier in the game, that sense of freedom, the thrill of discovering secrets. But here, that same open map becomes a liability. Long stretches of uneventful sailing transform what was once adventure into a monotonous commute. You're not exploring anymore. You're running errands. Wind Waker HD didn't tweak this sequence. It restructured it entirely, reducing the charts requiring Tingle's decoding and handing several shards out as direct story rewards. That's one of the most extensive redesigns any Zelda remaster has applied to a single segment, which tells you everything about how badly the original misjudged its pacing. Triforce Hunt became shorthand for late game padding across genres. That's a damning legacy for an otherwise beloved game. But if you think fetch quests and rupee grinding are bad, wait until you're forced to fight the same lumbering boss 3 separate times, with motion controls that may or may not register your input correctly. Motion, control, sword combat. Skyward Sword built its entire combat system around one idea. Your hand is the sword. Enemies hold shields at specific angles, forcing you to slash from matching directions. Bosses like Girahim literally read your sword position in real time and deflect attacks unless you fake them out. Motion wasn't an input layer, it was the foundation, and when it worked, it felt incredible. When it didn't, it felt like the hardware was gaslighting you. The core problem was sensor drift. During extended play, the Wii Motion Plus would gradually lose track of where your hand actually was. You'd swing horizontally, and Link would slash diagonally. You'd thrust forward, and nothing would happen. You'd be mid-boss fight, trying to land a precise hit on Girahim's opening, and the sword would just refuse to cooperate. Failure didn't feel like a skill issue. It felt like hardware betrayal. Then there's the physical toll. Hours of swinging your arm, recalibrating every 10 minutes, adjusting your posture to stay within sensor range. Some players reported genuine fatigue after long sessions, and for anyone with physical limitations, the system wasn't just inconvenient, it was exclusionary. But here's where it gets complicated. Skyward Sword HD introduced a full analog stick alternative. Flick the right stick in different directions, and Link slashes accordingly. The directional combat logic survived the transplant entirely, and when players who had avoided the game due to motion controls finally experienced it with traditional input, they discovered the combat design itself is actually inventive and satisfying. The HD remaster forced a question into the open. Was motion sword combat a bad idea, or was it a good idea trapped in imperfect hardware? The fact that the system works when decoupled from motion suggests the latter. Skyward Sword's motion controls might be the most successfully rehabilitated mechanic in the franchise, because it turned out the concept was never the problem. The Wii Remote was, but if you think arguing about swords was bad, wait until you hear about the weapons that disintegrate in your hands mid-swing. Weapon. Durability. Every weapon in Breath of the Wild breaks. Every single one. You swing a sword at a bokoblin, you lose durability. You spin attack through a camp, you lose durability. You smash a box, you lose durability. When the number hits 0, the weapon shatters mid-combat, often mid-swing, sometimes during a boss fight when you really needed it to last 3 more hits. The Master Sword doesn't break, but it goes on cooldown for 10 real-time minutes after you use it too much, which is somehow worse because you're stuck waiting for a timer instead of finding a replacement. And here's the thing, nobody wants to admit, you are absolutely hoarding weapons you will never use. You have a Royal Claymore sitting in your inventory right now that you've carried through 12 enemy camps without swinging it once, because what if I need it later? You are fighting linnels with tree branches because the good swords are too good to waste. This behavior is completely irrational, because weapons are everywhere and replacements are always nearby, but it is also completely universal. Loss aversion is a hell of a drug. Tears of the Kingdom made it worse. Now you're not just losing a weapon you found, you're losing a weapon you built. You fuse a linnel horn to that claymore. That represents time, effort, and a rare drop you might not see again for hours. Watching it explode feels like watching your crafting investment evaporate in slow motion. Here's where it gets complicated. Weapon durability isn't a feature bolted onto Breath of the Wild. It's the skeleton the entire game is built on. Enemy camp layouts are designed around scavenging weapons. Combat shrines scale difficulty, expecting you to adapt to whatever you're holding. The game's world design is tuned around the assumption that weapons are temporary. Removing durability wouldn't simplify the game. It would require redesigning the world. That's why Nintendo has never added a toggle, despite years of sustained community demand across 2 flagship titles. The mechanic is too deeply embedded. You can't just turn it off without breaking dozens of other systems. Whether that's brilliant structural design or stubbornly infuriating depends entirely on whether you find the constant churn exhilarating or exhausting. The community is split down the middle, and neither side is budging. But if you think watching your favorite sword shatter is the worst thing a Zelda game can do to you, wait until you hear about the dungeon that makes you replay the same floors over and over under a literal countdown timer, draining your life. Phantom Hourglass Temple of the Ocean King Timer. Everything else on this list is a feature that frustrates players. The Ocean King timer is the game. That's the distinction that puts it last. You can ignore the beeping, you can wait out the rain, you can swallow the Triforce hunt once, but you cannot avoid the Temple of the Ocean King in Phantom Hourglass, because it is the spine of the entire game, and if it drives you insane, that insanity is the experience. The temple is not a dungeon you complete once. It is revisited across the entire game, each time descending further with newly acquired items. Every visit requires traversing the same early floors under a countdown timer that depletes 1 second per second inside the curse. When the sand runs out, health damage begins. The mechanic's double penalty structure is its cruelest feature. Being spotted by a phantom and forced into evasion costs both health and timer seconds simultaneously. And because phantom patrol routes are fixed, being caught means failing on execution of something the player already knows, not failing to understand it. Shortcuts and permanent switches that bypass earlier floors become available over time, but they do not eliminate the early floor obligation. They only reduce it. Every run through the temple carries a tax of repeated content under active time pressure, regardless of player mastery. The timer is the central artery of the entire game's progression loop, not an optional challenge mode. Every major story milestone resolves by returning to the temple and ascending further. Any irritation it generates permeates the player's relationship with Phantom Hourglass as a whole, rather than coloring a single dungeon memory. The Temple of the Ocean King is cited in design criticism and retrospective reviews as a cautionary tale for heavy repetition combined with strict timers and narrative critical content. Its legacy influenced how subsequent experimental Zelda dungeons were designed and received, making it not just the most notoriously frustrating mechanic on this list, but possibly the most instructive failure in the franchise's history. Game designers still cite this dungeon by name when talking about what not to do. That's a different kind of immortality. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.